Welcome to the Bound to be Rich podcast, where I attempt to reverse engineer people who seem to be successful no matter the circumstances so that you can apply those lessons to your own life. I'm your host, Ismail Hamed. One quick thing before we get started. I am starting my own email newsletter, and I would love for you to join it. It's going to be like a personal note for me to my friends of all the best things I've come across that month. From hacks and tips, interesting stories, products, books, ways to make money, and who knows what else. It's totally free. And if you don't like it, you can always opt out at any time, so there's no downside. The link to join is in the show notes, and I hope to see you on the list. In this episode, we are joined by Simon Lerner, founder of NetCon and a very successful young entrepreneur. Simon has an amazing story. From immigrating to America, making money playing video games, getting into Columbia University but dropping out, to getting into trading, organizing educational conferences, and investing in real estate. We get into it all. The crazy part is that he's only 21. It doesn't take long into speaking with him to realize he's different. We cover his entire journey in our conversation and dig deep into how he's been able to accomplish so much already, how he thought about dropping out, what gives him the mindset to succeed, how he networks with other high achievers, and much, much more. There's a gold mine of valuable takeaways and anecdotes in this one. By the way, if you're interested in trading, you're in for a real treat because I am dedicating the next month to interviews with successful traders. There are some really incredible episodes coming. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss out. All right, let's dive in. Simon, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you making the time.
Ishmael, thank you for having me. Really appreciate you taking time as well.
I'm really stoked to speak with you because we've been going back and forth on social media for a long time, and I feel like we have a lot of similar interests or experiences. So I really was looking forward to this conversation. I think if I think back to our first DMs to each other way back in the day, it was me asking you about moving to Florida. So if you don't mind sharing, why did you move from New York to Florida, and how has that gone?
Absolutely. I mean, I want to, set the tone a little bit because New York was not my home place either. I wasn't born in New York, raised in New York. I came to New York when I was 13 years old. I was born and raised in Russia, so a lot of people don't know that. My parents brought me to America for the purpose of education. They thought that America had the greatest education at the time. To them, education was that one thing that can help you really, set yourself up for quote unquote success and build the life of your dreams. To them, that was, the pure American dream. As immigrants to the country, they brought me in pursuit of higher education, right? Because obviously Russia at the time did not have as good of education as America did. And they brought me to America at 13. I went to 8th grade in middle school, all of high school, and I started college in New York, but I ended up dropping out in the middle of freshman year out of college, and I was still living in New York, and at that point it just made sense to move to Florida for several reasons. Number one being no state tax, weather. I was tired of the 4 to 6 months of snow every single year growing up in Russia, so I had 13 years of that, and then coming to New York having a very similar kind of climate where pretty much from November to mid-April you have snow. I was just not about that. I needed a change of environment. And the thing is, I was pretty much used to the consistent change because I've changed my environment many times. We've moved probably, I think I went to 4 or 5 different schools. We moved, a lot as a kid. Even in New York, we moved homes 3 times in a span of 5 years probably. So change was not something that I was scared of. I embrace change very well, and I love changing my environment. So to me, the fact that I wasn't in school anymore, and I think dive into it a little bit later, why I dropped out and all that stuff, just gave me another opportunity to move, change my environment, change the people I'm around, and have a different social exposure because obviously Florida is so much different than New York.
Yeah, I was strong considering it as well. And the only thing that stopped me was that the real estate market in the town that I was looking at got crazy. They were competitive bidding on the lots for new homes, the old homes, there wasn't any listings. So it just got really, really crazy. And that's kind of why I had to pause my search.
Sure.
But you talked about dropping out. And then what's really interesting to me as a son of immigrants as well, I know the pressure of pursuing higher education as a son of immigrants that came to this country for a better life, for better education, as you said. How did dropping off go with your parents? And if you can get into the story of like why and how you thought about making that decision.
For sure. So I went to, so just to set the tone, I was going to school for engineering. I got accepted into Columbia Engineering, which is a really kind of good school. Like it's an Ivy League school. Not to brag or anything, but I was good at math, science, and all that stuff. And my parents said, "Hey, you're gonna go get an engineering job. It's gonna pay you well. You're gonna make 150 to 250K a year. You're gonna be happy, satisfied with that." I went to the first semester and I really just hated every moment of it because I knew I was doing it for my parents, not for myself. I really wasn't like enjoying it, even though yes, I was good at it intrinsically because as a kid growing up, I was always playing with Legos. I was always more of a math, science person than English and social studies, language, right? So I was very hands-on in math, but just there was a disconnect because when someone enforces something on you, obviously you're doing it for them rather than for yourself. To me, business was something I was more so inclined towards. And at the time of going to college already, I was getting into trading. I started, senior year of high school. And over the summer, I started picking up trading. And I was trading in school, before school, during class, because trading was more appealing to me. And really like something that interested me more than the classes and the lectures and the boring stuff in school. I found it very boring. So that was where I realized, hey, I want to go more so the business route. So what I did was the first semester I went for engineering. The second semester my parents were like, okay, fine, like you still need to go to school. If you don't want to do engineering, pick something else. And I switched to business for the second semester of freshman year. And then I realized that I was learning more driving to and from school, listening to business podcasts around people like, Andy Frisella, Joel Marion, right? Like big podcasts than I did sitting in class learning from a professor who's never had a business, who only conceptually knows how a business is supposed to be run or made. The business is taught from outdated, 1990s, early 2000 textbooks, and they're just regurgitating information from the textbooks rather than learning from people who actually have built 8, 9, 10-figure businesses. So there was a disconnect in that part because I knew that the apple doesn't fall far from the tree. And if I'm learning from people who have never ran a successful business or are making, $80,000 a year, I'm probably going to be somewhere in that, ballpark range, similar to my, professor. So the decision to drop out came for, several things. And I remember vividly, there was this one point, I was trading, stocks. I was not really consistently profitable just yet. That was freshman year in college. I went to my economics professor after his lecture because we were talking about stocks, the stock market, different instruments, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and all of the, important stuff about stocks. And I came to him and I said, hey, I really enjoyed your lecture today. I'm actually, trying to get more hands-on into trading. I'm trading Tesla right now. I wanted to get your opinion on like what I should do. Should I buy more? Should I sell all of it? And that was when Tesla was about $180 pre-split, right? And he said, Simon, I really appreciate your enthusiasm for the class, but I actually can't give you any advice on what to do with your stock because I personally am not invested in the stock market. My wife doesn't let me trade it or invest. And I was like, wait a second. So I'm going to have my parents spend all their hard-earned money on an education. So I'm learning business or quote unquote, the stock market from the person whose wife doesn't even let him invest or trade. Like, how does that make sense? He's not a practitioner, right? It's like, think of it in, I had an analogy. I'm like, what if I went to the gym and I was taking advice from a 300-pound overweight man on how to get a six-pack? In theory, he might know how to get a six-pack, right? He might have read about it, watched videos. He might know that he needs to be in a caloric deficit, do certain exercises, but he's never had it or achieved it, right? So why should I be taking advice from him? So at that point, it became clearly apparent that school was not the place, for me to learn those particular things. I'm not saying school is bad and you can't learn things, but just that particular niche that I wanted to be involved in. The people that were giving me advice were not successful enough or had results that I was trying to get for myself So I said, okay, let me take a break from this. I'm going to go take that money, that is being paid for my education, and invest it into education from people who actually have the results that I'm trying to achieve. And guess what? If things don't work out, I can always just go back to school. So it was a very limited downside of like, hey, I can take the next year, 2 years and go try to, I'm not just going to take it off and go do God knows what, right? I'm still going to learn, invest in myself, educate myself. But I'm going to learn from people who have results that I want, rather than just a professor who's making 50, 60, 70K a year, teaching you things from a textbook.
There's so much I think the whole concept of education now can be a whole podcast in itself, but there's a lot of things that you said that resonated with me. I had a similar experience where I was going to college during the financial crisis, and I remember I had a similar moment where I just stopped paying attention to people and I was just following the news because I'm like, I'm living through history right now. This is the best time to learn investing and trading. The professors didn't even know what's going on. So I was just reading the Wall Street Journal and following things in the classroom as opposed to paying attention to the professor. I also was listening to podcasts back and forth, and I was learning more from them. I think it's a tough thing for business, people interested in business and specifically entrepreneurship. You can't really learn that as well in school from people who haven't done it, right? How are you going to teach entrepreneurship in school if you haven't been an entrepreneur? So how do you solve that, though? Because I have kids now, and everyone's like, you got to start a 501c, whatever the college account is, to save money for their college. And I did not do that because I don't know what college is going to look like in 20 years. It already looks questionable to me now for people that are, unless you're doing a law degree or medical degree where it's required. I don't know how it's going to look in 20 years. So I just started an investment account for my kids because I'm not sure, how do you solve this education problem? And then the final thing that stood out to me is that dropping out sounds irresponsible, but the way you laid it out, it was very mature and thought through. I think if young people are listening that want to drop out, you'd learn a lot from listening to how Simon just explained his thought process. And like you said, you weren't going to just throw it away. You were going to go learn from people who have done it. So how did you go about finding the correct education?
Gotcha. So this is actually where NetCon comes in a way, and I'll touch up on that in a second. With us, with our company, our mission is to reform the way people learn, and our goal is to provide education in different formats for people that want to learn about business and entrepreneurship, right? Whether it's because obviously everybody learns in different ways. Some people prefer audio format like this podcast that people are listening to right now. Some people prefer reading. Some people like video explanations. Some people like live events where you can work cohesively with a mentor or a coach, in person, right? You see them, you can interact with them. So our goal is to provide education in different mediums, right? So when I dropped out, and I'll kind of give a little bit more background than I gave in other interviews because I think it's important. So here's kind of the backstory of what was happening, just to set the tone. For going back a couple of years prior, my parents were divorced, right? So I was raised by a single mom, and my dad never really contributed or paid child support or aliments or whatever you call it. But he came around when I was graduating high school. He felt bad. He's like, hey, I never really supported you or your mom. I'm going to pay for your college, right? He said, I want you to have that education. That's why we sent you to America in the first place. I'll pay for your school, right? So what was happening is for the first semester, I think it was $15K a year or something. 15K a semester, so 35K a year that he was willing to pay for my school. And since he was obviously overseas, he's still in Russia, he would send me that money to pay for school. So what happened is for the first semester, he paid me, he didn't pay me, he sent me $15,000. He's like, hey, that's money you're going to pay for school, right? And I paid for school, and I went for the first semester. The second semester, he sent me the same $15,000 to go pay for school. I went for the first week of the business semester, had that realization of, that, hey, I don't want to continue here. And then the deadline came hey, you need to pay for school. And then I was like, now it's time for me to really weigh my risk. What do I want to do? Because, my dad gave me $15,000 to spend on my quote unquote education, right? And I was like, I just wouldn't be able to look myself in the mirror if I took that $15,000. I would be doing him a disservice if I put that towards that sinkhole, right? That, to me, school stock was going towards zero. It had a negative trend was in a downward direction. I was like, let me take that money. I'm not just going to take it and blow it. I'm just going to take that money, but invest into education elsewhere, right? So I have that kind of foundation. I'm so glad for it because I know a lot of people, don't have $15,000 to invest into their education, or $15,000, in general. I obviously had, savings from jobs and hustles that I did as well to fund my trading accounts, but I had that $15,000 to educate myself, like after I dropped out of college. So what do? The second I dropped out, I was like, okay, I need to find people that have results that I want. And that was right at the time that 10X Growth Conference 3 was coming out with Grant Cardone and everybody. Like all the speakers, I think Kevin Hart, a bunch of other entrepreneurs, 30,000 people. It was like the biggest entrepreneur event of the year. I was like, let me go there because Grant Cardone is, the quote unquote billionaire. I want to be around people like him. I want to learn from the people that have results. And I spent probably $3,000-$4,000 going to Miami, going to that event, and was very disappointed because obviously I caught on real quick that the entire gist of the event was to sell people into coachings or programs rather than serve people and provide them with proper education. So it wasn't much better than college either, because I came to the event, people were passing around business cards advertising their business, and it wasn't personalized. You can't go up to Grant Cardone and be like, hey, let's sit down for 30 minutes an hour. I have these issues I want to discuss. Here's my portfolio. I want to have your thoughts on it. He'd be like, if you want to sit down with me one-on-one, that's going to be, $250,000 for an hour or something like that. Because obviously his time, his ROI on his time is much better speaking in front of 30,000 people than sitting one-on-one. And then when I returned, I was like, there's a flaw here, right, in this big event. And I know there's a lot of money people are making from this event. A lot of people invest money to go to those events to try to better themselves, but they are not getting the outcomes that they're coming there for, right? It was just a whole motivational fluff, motivational bullshit type of event where speakers went on stage and they would say, I made $1 million doing X, Y, and Z, so can you. If you want to learn how, you got to buy my course or program, right? That was like in a short 10 seconds what that event, was about, right? I'm not saying all events are like that, but generally speaking, the bigger the event, the less personalizable it is to your needs, and the more kind of salesy and pitchy it is, because for people to get help with their needs, they would need to enroll into some sort of more expensive version of the program. So I was like, well, let me try to host my own event where I would host it in a way where I would want to attend it, right? Because after attending that one 10X Growth conference, I knew that I wouldn't want to attend another one of those because I had a, poor experience. I wouldn't want to call it poor because it was eye-opening, but I know that I just wouldn't want to attend one more of these because it was just a waste of time and the ROI and the money I invested wasn't there. So I was like, what can be done differently? How can I serve people? How can people benefit from obviously education outside of school, obviously, education, but in a different manner, in a different format? I was like, okay, let me take this into my own hands and let me host my own event, right? And that's where NetCon was born. NetCon was broken down into Net and Con, where Net was for networking and Con was for conference, right? So it started as a networking conference where you actually get to build integrity-based relationships with people rather than just attend an event, sit in a chair, and take out your credit card to purchase stuff. So we hosted the event, and I was like, what are some parameters that I'd want to adjust and change based off of what I've seen from the 2 or 3 events I went to? I was like, okay, number one, I wanted to be close-knit and intimate, where the ratio between speakers and attendees is small, right? Where, like in 10X, the ratio between speakers and attendees is probably like 1 to 2,000, where for every speaker that goes up, there's 2,000 people ratio, right? With us in NetCon, the ratio was about 1 to 10, 1 to 12, right? So you can only imagine when you have, let's say, 10 speakers who have experience in a certain niche working with, instead of 30,000 people, it's only 100 people, 150 people. Then it becomes more so than, let me sell you this, let me sell you that. Let's break down into small groups. Let's have different formats of learning. Some are going to be panel discussions, right? Where there's 4 or 5 speakers in different, in the same realm of expertise that people can ask their questions that matter to them. Because for me, the biggest issue was I couldn't ask questions that I had concerns about or I had questions about. I couldn't be like, hey, Grant Cardone, what about this? Or I actually had experience with this and that. What would you suggest? There was none of that, right? So we integrated, that into the conferences, as well as, a lot more stuff that I'm not going to dive into too much details.
Well,
here with,
before
right?
I ask my question, I just want to say that I also relate to this because I went to a couple of conferences in a specific niche industry. I've got a business in the photo booth industry, and I had the same realization where I wanted to do it differently. And I organized my own event, similar concept, more intimate, better speakers, more speakers. Unfortunately, I had to pivot that to virtual because it was scheduled for like March of 2020. So that was a whole roller coaster ride, a lot of lessons learned there. But my question to you is, you're like 18, 19 at this time, I assume.
Yep.
What gave you, like, why did you think, hey, I'm going to do it on my own? Like that's a lot. Like, that's not normal for an 18-year-old to think, I'm going to drop out and I'm going to do this on my own. I'm going to do it better than Grant Cardone.
I guess I can't really describe it in a way that a lot of people will understand. I think entrepreneurs will definitely understand, people who don't have that, I guess, entrepreneurial really spirit, because I think a lot of people are born with it and some people are just not born with it. So I definitely think I had a slight edge in that thing, because my dad, like I probably got it from him. He was an entrepreneur his entire life. He's built, a company back in Russia in the early 2000s in the advertising space. He was doing not digital advertising. He was doing billboard advertising. He had, I think the fourth largest company in the country at the time in the early 2000s for billboard advertising, for like digital screens. And then they went out of business when Facebook and YouTube ads and all that came about. But before that, he was driving taxis, fixing leaking faucets, like anything he could do to have, a business or like some sort of entrepreneurial endeavor. He's had probably like 25, 30 different ventures, right? So I definitely, got that from him in a way, but it's also a muscle and a skill you can develop, right? I know that for a fact, hustles and, making money, obviously that's not the dream outcome for me now, but at the time when I was 15, 16, that was something that was very enticing to me. Things like flipping things online and, providing people quote unquote value, whether it's editing pictures for clients on Fiverr or Upwork, right?
So you've done all that. Yeah.
I've done all that. I've had experience with that. And I've built certain skills by the time I was 18 that really helped me see this big vision, right? Skills like communication, right? I feel like I've developed a very decent ability to communicate with people and, sense out people's needs and wants, right? And be able to, I don't want to use buzzwords as provide value. Obviously, provide value is very generic. People always say provide value. Well, what does, that mean? But I feel like I've gotten very good at providing value to people and being seen as a valuable asset to people. And in terms of providing value, like again, what does that mean? It's just meeting needs and wants of people. And how do you do that? Well, you can either possess skills to provide value to people, or you can facilitate an introduction to somebody who has the skills. So I know for a lot of people who reach out to influencers or want to connect with people or want to mentor, they always hear like, hey, you need to provide value to those people so they pay attention to you, right? Because obviously they get hundreds and thousands of DMs and messages a day. How do you stand out, right? You need to provide value. But for you to provide value, a lot of people know that it doesn't have to be them that's providing the value. They can just be a valuable asset to that person by making an introduction. So, another question is like, how did you get 13 speakers for your first event who are 7, 8 figure earners, right? Well, I connected with 1 or 2 at the 10X Growth Conference. That's why I'm not saying it was a bad experience. I met a few people there. Fernando Valencia was our MC for the event that I met at 10X Growth Con. And I connected with him, and then I leveraged that connection and leveraged that network to have him introduce me to like 6 or 7 other speakers. And then through those speakers, I got to tap into their network. And for one of them, I sent a message, and he didn't see it. He wouldn't reply. I really wanted him to be a speaker at my event, and I saw on his story he posted, "Hey, I'm looking for if anybody can help me with the website stuff." And instead of just messaging with a mentality of ask, like, hey, come speak at my event, come help me do this, I need you for this. I switched my mentality and I was like, let me switch it to a giving mentality. What can I give this person so he finds me valuable to then possibly later reciprocate that to me? I didn't go in with expectations of having him reciprocate that to me, but I went in and I made a group chat introduction with our website developer and him. I didn't say, hey, come speak at my event. I was a total stranger. I said, hey, I'm not going to mention his name. Let's just say his name was John. Hey, John, I know Albert. Albert is a great website developer. I'd like for the two of you to connect. I think he'd be able to assist you with your needs, right? And that was it, right? Because I personally don't possess the skills to build a website. I don't know how to build websites in a fast, efficient manner or up to the industry standards, but I know somebody who does, right? And I know somebody who has a need for a website. So now I can make a introduction, and very fast I become a valuable piece of the equation for both parties because I'm solving an issue for both of them. For John, I'm helping him find somebody that can provide quality work, a website or whatever needs he had. And for Albert, who's making the websites, I'm providing him a referral, a client, right? So very quickly, I become this amazing person for Albert and for John.
But what do you gain out of that?
I gain the fact that now I'm likable by John and Albert, and now without any expectations, I know that in the future, if I need something, or I know that John may need something, I now have the right, in a way, to ask for something in return, right? It's just similar to Gary Vee's book, Jab, 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 Right Hook, where it's like give, 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 and then ask, right? I want to give without any expectations in return, but I know in the future, if there's something that I may need, that person would more than likely go out of their way to assist. Where now I know that I can go 4 months later to Albert and be like, hey, do you know anybody by any chance that is good at video editing, or do you know anybody who can help me with this? And he might be like, yeah, I know this guy. Let me introduce you guys, right? Whereas I either wouldn't have known the other person, or they just wouldn't have responded to my DMs. But when they make that introduction on my behalf, right, rather than just me reaching out, they're like, hey, Ishmael, meet Simon. I automatically seem credible to you because a friend that you trust is making that introduction, right?
Yeah, I think you just broke down perfectly networking in today's day and age with social media and everything. You're right. You can't take it personally because people are so busy. They get so many messages. And I've done the same thing where becoming the connector is like an underrated, undervalued way of growing your network. Everyone wants to connect themselves, but no one wants to be a connector. And I found that being the connector is way more valuable. And just like you said, there's no guarantee that they're going to reciprocate it. But the next time you send a message, they're going to see it. They're going to at least look at it. And there's just a higher chance of you getting through by being the connector. It reminds me, so here's a general question I have, because when I talk to Josh Ordonez, people who haven't heard that podcast, they can listen to that as well. He talked very highly of you, and I think he referred to you as like a beast or a machine. And the stories that he specifically mentioned was about how you were very generous. And I think he's talked about, I don't want to butcher it, but I think he came to your Hampton event and you had a crazy house and you let him stay there for free. Why are you, and even with this interview right now, you, without getting into the details, you're very generous with sharing knowledge, and people follow you on social media, they can see that. Why are you like that? Is there some ulterior motive where you're going to benefit somehow? Is it just naturally part of your personality? Where does that generosity come from?
I feel like it's somewhere in the middle with understanding, number one, human psychology, and number two, just, my ultimate, upbringing, the way, my parents raised me, I guess, in, Eastern European culture, it's a norm in a way, just, I would say, comparing the American society and the Russian society where I grew up, I know that people, like, in general, are much more open back home where I come from. Obviously, Americans have, some sort of negative stigma because of news and whatnot, but, I actually lived in both countries, and I can make that, comparison, right, where in Russia, if you have an elderly woman and just crossing a road and you have some sort of teenager walking by, that teenager, like, 5 out of 10 cases, that teenager would go up to the elderly woman, ask her if she needs help, help her carry groceries. Whereas in America, like I've rarely seen something like that happen, right? That doesn't, number one, the cultural exposure, I would say. Number two is just understanding, human psychology. I feel like, there is two types of people. There's people that are very repelling, and there's people that are liked, and others gravitate towards them like a magnet in a way, right? And I've studied a lot of people that I personally have gravitated towards, people like Umar, people like Tony Robbins, people like, of that high caliber. And I kind of pondered, and I was like, what makes me gravitate towards those people? What makes those people so likable in my mind? Is it, and I've read, a lot of psychology books. I love psychology and understanding human mind and emotions and why people make certain decisions. And in one of the books, I don't remember which one at this current point in time, I remember there was a concept talking about how, acts of kindness, charity, gift giving, obviously all those things are seen as, something that people gravitate towards, right? And makes you, I guess, sort of elevated in that person's mind, because they see you are doing like an act of, gratitude and kindness, right? And they can relate on that aspect, because they want to be in that position as well. They want to be able to give. They want to be able to provide. They want to be able to, donate to charity or help people, right? For a lot of people, for 99% of human population, we're good people. We want to help people. We want everybody to do well. There's, obviously people, there are just bad people that want others to suffer and whatnot. But for the majority of people, they're good people. They're great people. They want, nothing but happiness and success and whatever. But their human psychology obviously gets in a way where there's envy, there is jealousy, there is, oh, he's doing better than me, so I need to, do something so he's not doing as good, to make myself feel better, about my insecurities and stuff like that. But for the majority of people, we're good people, right?
It's interesting you mentioned the cultural differences. My family came from Yugoslavia at the time, which is now like modern-day Macedonia, so it's Eastern European connection there. And I've also seen the same thing, where there's more of a community aspect there versus in America. Like, I remember working on Wall Street, I literally saw a guy have a heart attack in Penn Station, and people are like stepping over him and like nobody cared. Everybody's trying to get to work. That would not happen in like the small town in Macedonia, like you said. So there's a very different culture. Here it's almost like people don't trust generosity. They think there's something behind it. So I'm glad you answered that question that way. And you mentioned Umar. We'll get into trading next, but I think one thing I relate between you and him is that you're both very generous and also transparent, which is very appealing in that sector. Like in that world, there's not a lot of transparency. But before we dive into that, two more things with the NetCon. Well, one general thing. You mentioned, I'll go with this question. The NetCon event. I think I read somewhere that you had a fear of public speaking. And is that part of the reason that you wanted to do the event and speak in front of crowds, to deal with that fear? Or was that like a side effect benefit kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. Statistically, people are more afraid of public speaking than they are of death. That's their biggest, for the majority of people. There are surveys that have, had thousands of participants, and it's been clearly proven that people are more afraid of public speaking than anything, right? And obviously I consider speaking one of, there's obviously quote unquote high income skills or very valuable skills. I consider speaking to be one of the most valuable skills, to be able to deliver a message. I knew that if I was to be in a realm of business, any kind of business or entrepreneurship, I would want to be in the leadership position. And for me to be in some sort of leadership position, to have persuasion, to have people listen to what it is that I have to say, to communicate effectively with my team and future employees, business partners, I need to master speaking. I need to get better at speaking, right? And that was one of the skills that I needed to develop. And for me, I'll just interrupt you real quick. any skill that it is that I want to learn, I dive right in. And I think the one takeaway that people can have from this podcast is don't be afraid or overthink about whatever it is that you want to learn. Go dive right in. So with speaking, how I learned it is by speaking, right? Is by hosting an event and getting on stage in front of hundreds of people and challenging that fear. With real estate, how did I get into real estate, right? I bought, 2 properties. We're closing on one property right after this call. Actually, we have closing at 1:30 p.m. And then I figured out, hey, here's what I'm going to do with the properties, right? And I learned it by doing it. With trading, it was the same thing. Instead of reading 100 books and watching 100 YouTube videos, I opened an account, I funded it, and I started trading, right? And that's how I learned trading, by making mistakes, by figuring out, oh, this button does this, or by connecting with people in real estate, right? By buying this property, now I know this agent, now I know this seller agent, now I know, I have a contract template, now I know the entire closing process, now I know, how the title company works and all that stuff. And now I have that actual experience because I've done it, rather than, it's just an accelerated learning curve. Whereas if you're just sitting there on the computer, reading about all those things, yes, in theory, they might make sense, but you need to really have that practice behind it to really get good at the skill. And it's just like the previous example of the overweight man in the gym, right? In theory, he might know how to do a six-pack, but the only way to get there is by actually starting to exercise, right?
You mentioned hustles to fund the trading account. You mentioned Fiverr. I don't know if you know that girl that was viral for making a lot of money on Fiverr, Alexandra Fasulo, the Fiverr girl on CNBC. She made over $1 million in Fiverr. I interviewed her a couple episodes ago. So if someone's listening to this, I know you have a lot of followers too that are aspiring traders. The main stumbling block people have is like, oh, I don't have money. Where do I get money? Are there any hustles that you did that were effective in, making some cash to fund a trading account?
I'll tell you exactly what I did. So from the age of 12 to 16, I was playing video games, but I never played video games for the aspect because I liked, the video game itself, or like shooting people on a virtual screen or something. I was playing things like CSGO and like all those things through Steam when I was like 12, 13, all the way up to like probably sophomore year of high school. But I was never playing any video games from an early age because of the video game. I was playing it because of the community, the people that I was playing with, and the marketplace system. A lot of video games nowadays have some sort of digital marketplace, right? And I really got fascinated by that at the age of 12. So from the age of 12 to 16, I was playing those video games, but I was never, every day from school, I'd come back to, play that game and talk to people online. And I was never really playing it for the aspect of like the game or just achieving something in a game. It was always like acquiring those virtual items and doing that thing in a game, right? And at the age of 16, I sold all of that for about $15,000. It took me like 4 years to like build that inventory and stuff and talk to people. But that was a very big pivotal point in my life. I think probably the most important point in my life was when I cashed out, those items I acquired over 4 years in the video game for, real money. It proved to me that a business was going to head in the online, e-commerce space, and the online world, really existed. And I proved it to myself when I understood that strangers on the internet are willing to pay you money, right? And that's when I never looked back, right? When I had that realization that strangers on the internet are willing to send you money, that's when I was like click, aha moment.
I'm like nodding my head because I'm glad I asked that question. I didn't know that was going to be the answer. I did the same thing, and I've never met anyone else that did the same thing. I probably have never shared this before, and maybe it's a little embarrassing, but I used to play World of Warcraft, and it was the same thing where I would accrue. There was in-game currency, gold, or all these other materials that you built stuff with, or these weapons, and I would sell all that stuff, and I was making money playing this game. The other reason I played games was to learn strategy. I think that's an underrated. Like instead of playing, I don't know, what do people play, Call of Duty or whatever now? I played a lot of these strategy games to learn. Okay, what happens if you do this? What happens if you do that? So video games aren't totally pointless. So that's an awesome anecdote. All right, so you got the money.
Yeah,
go ahead.
Quickly. Another thing on strategy that I really think helped me in business was when I was growing up, and actually on a Russian education system, real quick, I was like really good at chess, and I still play chess just for leisure, for fun, right? But I would have a person come into our apartment in Russia every weekend to play chess with me for like 2 hours, right? And teach me chess and teach me strategy and all that stuff. And then actually in school, from the second to the sixth grade, chess is a mandatory class that every student has to take, right? So, there's English, math, science, whatever else, and then there's chess, right? Which I find very fascinating about Russian schools, because a lot of Russians are great at chess. So we have a lot of grandmasters in our country. Karpov, Kasparov, like all those people are either from Eastern European descent or are Russian, right? And chess is like a mandatory class, and it really develops a young human being's mind on strategy, on thinking ahead, not just thinking for today. And I feel like in American society, this is something that's lacking, because people are so short focused on just what am I going to do today? How am I going to, get to work, get back from work, and, maybe not even there. Like, what am I having for lunch? That's the farthest their mind expands, right?
Yeah,
So,
I definitely think video games get a bad rap. I think I've learned a lot. Like the whole gamification, even going back to college, I actually finished college. I did it quickly, and the gamification that I did was that every day, the first day of your class, the professor gives you a syllabus and they tell you exactly how your grades calculated. And I would look at that sheet and I'm like, all right, 25% is attendance, 25% is submitting your homework, and whatever, right? And I'm like, all right, if I just show up and submit my homework, I can literally get like a 30 on every quiz and exam and still pass the class. So it was like a low barrier of effort for me to continue to finish it. So that's what I did personally. But I'm always interested to hear from people that actually dropped out. All right, so that's fascinating. You got the money for trading. How did you, first of all, I know you went through the stock market lab experience with Umar. You learned a lot, but you were trading before that, right? You said you were learning on your own. And I know from interviewing people, literally almost everyone blows their account at least once, most often multiple times. It's like a big learning curve. Everyone thinks it's easy. Why was it worth going through that educational experience, even though you were already doing it yourself?
for sure. And I'll just quickly, again, give you a summary. It took me 18 months and 5 loan counts and over $30,000 of loss to get to a point of just no longer losing money.
By the way, I love that transparency, because everyone makes it seem easy. That's the reality that it really takes to get there.
And finally, getting out of that depressing 18 months, and finally seeing your equity curve start climbing back up. That was inspiring. So here's the thing: I started learning, before SML or any other courses from YouTube. I've bought many programs and courses. I love investing into myself and investing into my own education. To date, for 2021 in our company, me and my employees, we've spent close to $250,000 on development, coaching, and things of that nature, to work with mentors who are doing better than us, to implement systems and processes that can help us achieve more. And it's just constant reinvesting into yourself, and your growth is what is making you more valuable and helping you really achieve new heights, right? So we always see an ROI. And for, I guess, a golden nugget for people listening, if you have $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, I have people reaching out to me like, I have $2,000, $3,000 to my name. What should I invest it in? The best ROI you will ever get is investing in yourself. There is no stock, no crypto, no shitcoin or altcoin that you can put $2,000 in that will produce you a higher ROI than putting $2,000 into yourself, into learning a skill, into developing yourself, right? So if you have under $10,000 to your name, please invest at least half of that into yourself, right? And you're gonna hopefully thank me for that. But here's what happened: I was learning from YouTube, from a bunch of courses, and I took SML, and after SML I still blew 2 accounts, so it's not like that was the miracle thing that saved me a lot of time, money, and energy. Like, I still obviously blew accounts after it, so I don't want to say that, hey, if you're going to take one course, you're going to be successful right after that. And I don't credit my trading success to any one particular person, right? I don't say like Umar taught me trading, or Ricky Gutierrez taught me trading, or Ishmael, helped me with trading. I guess for me, I borrowed elements and foundations from each and every course, each and every book I read, each and every mentorship, I borrowed the things that worked for me. I implemented what worked for me. I discarded things that I thought were either silly or just didn't align with my trading strategy or personality, because all of us trade differently. And then I put together what, my own thing that is like Simon, that works for me, right? So
What 18 months of failing, and now you're killing it. What do you, if you had to boil it down to like the main thing or the main couple things, what was the difference now versus then?
consistency, I'll tell you that, and self-awareness, right? Self-awareness is, I love trading because trading is that one profession where it will show you so much about yourself that no other professional career will show you about yourself. It will tell you, everything about your greed aspects, your hope aspects, your fear aspects, how you make certain decisions, when you panic, like where you lack things, why you make certain decisions in your head, looking, in hindsight, why did I take that trade? Oh, I got too greedy, right? Or whatever it is. That's number one. Number two is, let's see. Could you rephrase the question?
I'm basically trying to get at like, it was 18 months of hard times and failure that a lot of people listening may be going through. But now you're on the other side. So like, what are the most critical things to know? Or like, what are you doing differently now that you weren't doing before?
Mm-hmm. So understanding your personality is obviously something that trading will help you with. With me, I know that I'm the most persistent person I know myself, right? I'm very persistent, but I'm fairly inconsistent, right? Persistent is pretty much meaning that if something doesn't work, you will keep at it until it worked, right? But the definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over again and expecting different results, right? So with me, I know that I don't have any issues in any aspect of my life or with trading. Just getting out, trying again, getting out, trying again. If it doesn't work, you get up and you try again, you try again, you try again until hopefully it starts working, right? The other kind of aspect which I was lacking is the consistency aspect, right? Consistency, in your routines and showing up to the market consistently, whether you made money or lost money, you show up anyways to look at the charts. Even if you're not trading, you're still looking at the market, right? That consistency aspect for me personally is my number one weakness that I experience in business, that I experience in life. And obviously, a lot of people think that with trading, it's just all about the charts or the screens or buying and selling or just clicking the two buttons, but it goes so much deeper than that, right? Clicking the buttons, buy and sell is probably 2% of the entire equation, right? And for you to have great consistency in trading, I feel like you need to have consistency in your other aspects of life, because your personal life and trading or business go hand in hand, right? If you don't have consistency in your personal life, you will never have consistency that you want to have in trading. And I promise you, it's so much easier to wake up and go to sleep at the same time consistently and eat well consistently and meditate consistently than it is to trade consistently well, right? And how you do one thing is how you do everything. And if you can't do the small things correctly, or consistently, you will never be able to do the big things.
And now, a quick message from our sponsors. If you are a trader or interested in trading, I strongly recommend you check out the Financial Cloud. I've personally spent a lot of time in the last couple of years learning trading, following different people, and joining different groups. But as soon as I joined the Financial Cloud, I was blown away and immediately knew this was the best resource out there. It was like finding a diamond in the rough, especially in the world of trading where there's a lot of charlatans out there. I'm such a fan that this is actually the only ad where I personally reached out and requested that they let me promote them. So that should say something. I attribute a lot of my own success in trading to the Financial Cloud, and I love the team there, so I'm more than happy to help spread the word. I've also got several of my family and friends to join. My favorite feature is the live chat. So for literally the entire market day, I'm listening to professional traders calling out plays and describing what they're seeing. There are also algorithms they've built that notice unusual activity and instantly call them out to alert you. And I'll admit I was skeptical about bots at first until I saw how effective they were. So believe it or not, these plays are now the core of my trading. And of course, there's also the Discord group with a huge active community, nonstop education, and classes offered as well. Quite honestly, they do not charge enough for all the value they provide. Sign up via the link in the show notes to get a 7-day free trial and 50% off your first month. Or you can just use promo code RICH, R-I-C-H. And within that time period, you'll know if it's worth it. In my experience, it's been a total no-brainer. All right, let's get back to the show. I can speak from personal experience. I think some of the worst trades I ever made was at points in my life that fall in that category, like you said, where I just had a baby, it's climbing up my leg, there's people crying, I'm not sleeping. Those are the times where I didn't do as well trading. I think you have to it's a mental and psychological game more than anything else. It's not just looking at charts, like you said. One final thing with the trading, it's this, let's say like it's the 17th month. You lost $30,000. You blew 5 accounts, like you said. I would think most people would give up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, what about you? Is it just like you said, there's just a persistency? Like, why did you think, hey, I'm going to figure this out? It clearly was not working for a long time.
Well, some of it is, again, just my stubborn personality. Some of it was really like fear of what's on the other hand, what's to come if I don't figure it out. Your back is kind of against the wall. It's like, you either figure this out or you go back to school and you're your parents' little bitch, sort of say, right? But there was that. There was also that desire to prove something to yourself, that you can do it. And then the reason that I kept going is because I proved to myself early on that it is possible, because I've seen people that are successful with it and are making it happen, right? People like Umar, Ricky, whoever it is, right? I looked at that and I said, if they can do it, I can do it, right? And that was my kind of like North Star, because once I have proof that it's possible, then it's just a matter of how and what, right, goes into the equation, right? And just adjusting and constantly course correcting from there on.
How do you trade? Because another question people have is they're so busy with work and jobs and whatnot. You're obviously involved in a lot of projects that we didn't touch on yet. How do you, like, you're doing closing calls, you're on this interview. I saw that you did a trade this morning that worked out well. How do you trade while balancing doing all these other things that you're doing?
Sure. It just it comes down to time management and having routines. For me with trading, I have 2 trading blocks that I respect religiously, and anything that goes outside of that, just doesn't happen. So with me, I trade from 9 in the morning, 30 minutes pre-market, to 11 a.m. And then I trade from 3:30 to 4 p.m. I rarely take trades then. I just look for possible swing trades or something along those lines. But typically, for me, it's 2 hours a day. And so 9 to 11 a.m. I work, and then, during that time, it's just trading time, me time, me and my craft. Anything else gets scheduled afterwards. There's no team meetings, there's no bookings, there's no showings, there's no calls allowed, right? My phone is either in a lockbox that I can't access it in, or in a different room locked in a drawer. I like to, for the first 4 hours of the day, prioritize myself before I can give to other people, right? It's that, again, I guess abundance thing, and I feel like you need to be, in a way, selfish in order to be selfless, right? I can give, time, energy to my employees and to my girlfriend, to my roommates, to my clients, to my the people I look up to, if I haven't had enough myself, right? So for me, the first 4 hours of the day, from 7 a.m. when I wake up to 11 a.m., it's my selfish time. That's time undistracted. I don't talk to anybody. I don't communicate with anyone. No one has access to me. I don't use my main phone. I have a different phone where there's only 2 phone numbers saved, like my mom and my dad, for emergencies, right? There's no social media apps. There's only Spotify and meditation apps. So that time is for reading, meditation, gym, trading, bettering yourself in your craft. At 4 hours, right, is just selfish time, right? Time for Simon. And then after that is when I open up to the rest of the world. Because as I said, in order for you to give and give quality to other people, you need to take care of yourself first.
I love anecdotes like that where, for lack of a better word, most people would call it weird. Oh, you got another phone, or you lock it in a lockbox. But I find most successful people have weird things they do, and I think that's why they're successful. And one other quick plug is I know you did a small account challenge recently, which I was really excited to see because you're
I'm doing it right now,
yeah.
actually. Yeah, the trades that I took today, that wasn't.
So
Yeah,
I was going to say, I was really excited to see you do that because you're one of the few people who's very transparent, whether you make money or lose money, and you actually show all the fills afterwards, so people can really learn from it. And I think, correct me if I'm wrong, it started at 10,000 like a week ago. You're up to like almost 15,000 now. That's like a 50% gain very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I strongly recommend everyone follows him and follows along that challenge. So the final question from trading, what's a realistic target goal? Like you just made 50% in a week. Let's say someone has like $2,000, $3,000 they want to invest. Is there any realistic goal of how big can I get this in a month or 2 months or whatnot?
Yeah. So I'll I'll say this in an anecdotal reply as well. I think of money the same as I think of cats and I think of women, right? If you chase it, it runs away, right? If you sit there patiently, it's going to come to you and it's going to ask for attention, right? It's just like a cat. You sit there, you chase it, it's going to run around and just run away from you. You're going to sit there patiently on the couch reading a book. It's going to come asking for attention. The same thing with money. The first 16 months or so of my trading, my only objective was I need to recoup my losses. I need to, make money in trading. I need to prove this to those people and myself. When the mental shift came from I need to make this amount of money to how about, it was like, Simon, last year you spent, losing money, gambling, improperly managing risk. How about the next year you just take to figure out this trading thing? You're not going to care about how much money you make or lose. The only thing that matters for you is the process, right? Of getting better at trading. I don't care if the next year I don't make a single dime or I lose my entire trading account. All I care about is figuring this out and learning how to trade. All right. And the same thing, like till today, I don't care how much I make a day or a week. I don't attach myself to the monetary aspect. I never have a daily or weekly or monthly goals or targets for how much money to make. I'll talk about what's realistic, what's unrealistic, but I don't think that anybody should have a daily or monthly, target of how much money they need to make because you're focusing on the outcome rather than the process. You're focusing on, I need to make X amount, otherwise, I'm a failure. I didn't, hit my targets. It's, I'm bad. But sometimes you need to understand that the market is not going to present yourself with opportunities to make that money. And what's going to happen is if you have, let's say, a daily goal of $500, you want to make $500 profit every single day. Some days there's just no opportunities. The markets are choppy, or you're tired, or there's no market direction, or no trade setting up that will allow you to make that. But having a subconscious outcome that you're chasing, which is that $500 you're trying to make, will subconsciously make you make certain decisions and trade when you're not supposed to trade to try to hit that outcome. And that's how you burn through accounts. You were chasing an outcome rather than following the process, right?
That was a great answer. A lot of, I think even Kobe Bryant talks about this in some of his interviews, the process. You got to focus on the process, not the outcome. But I think the way you broke it down was perfect. So you're also now investing in real estate. I know you're doing a major rehab on one of them now. I'm just curious. I've also flipped properties, so I'm curious how you thought about the rehab flipping route versus the buying and holding and renting route.
I'll tell you the thing. So I'm actually not in the rehab route. That was just a hard money loan I did to somebody.
Oh, okay.
Since, I have money. I funded a close friend of mine that I have developed a close relationship with. I've seen his work, so I funded him. He needed money for a flip, so I lent that to him. And obviously for me it was, I'm making money because I'm lending someone money and I'm getting interest on it, but I'm also getting a learning experience. So I'm getting paid to learn pretty much, right? And for me, that was like the best thing ever. If you can, learn for free, that's great. If you can get paid to learn, that's just, the best opportunity that you can possibly have. That's like paid internships in a way, right? But for me, with real estate, you have to understand there's so many ways to make money with real estate, just like there is in trading or any other, scale. You can day trade, you can scalp, you can swing trade, you can trade penny stocks, options, or stocks. You can make money in all those things. Same with real estate. You can, wholesale, you can flip, you can be a real estate agent, just showing properties and getting a commission. You can build and develop and just picking a niche and figuring out what works best for you. So for me, that niche is actually new construction development. And, rather than rehabbing or flipping, I go with, buying teardowns and building, or just buying land and building. And for me, that's most appealing because of everything else I have going on with my time allocation, I wanted to make sure that number one, my time allocation can still be spent on trading in my business, because that's my high income skill, and my highest revenue generating activities come from this. Right, real estate is great because it's passive. I get to diversify. Then also it was appealing to me because I don't want to get involved in things that are old, so to say. Like, oh, you bought this flip or this house, someone lived there before, the sink's broken, the roof's leaking, the foundation's crap, the home's 40 years old or whatever it is. It needs a new wall, it needs new stuff. If I'm building a new house from scratch, I know that there's builder's warranty for 5 years, so if anything goes wrong, it's going to get replaced. Number two, I know that it's brand new, and I will never have to really worry in the short term about new roof, new sink, new bathtub, new garage, new doorknob. Everything is new, so there's very little maintenance, right? And also, for me, that makes sense. And for me, I'm not selling those things. I'm holding them in my portfolio and either doing Airbnbs and long-term rentals. Right, so that makes sense for me. I don't want to sell those because for me it's a tax cut. I'm not going to get into too much taxes, right? But obviously real estate helps you lower your tax brackets in a way, and then also you get to depreciate it, and also I don't need a short-term capital gains if I sell those properties, right? So I'd rather keep that in my portfolio.
Yeah, I think I have the same general concept where I use things like trading and flipping real estate to generate cash that I then throw into longer term passive investments or things that I have a lot of conviction on for the long term. One other thing that you do is the e-commerce that I've seen you post about, and we interviewed Roman a couple episodes ago from Empire Ecom. Is there anything that you can share with how that's going? If anyone else is considering, I have a friend that started her own ecom business. So people that are looking in that field, is there anything that you've learned from that experience or how that's going?
Absolutely. I just want to clarify to a lot of people because they think, Simon does everything. He has time for everything. He's this crazy, beast, as Josh Rodoni, as you said, mentioned, that just, has time, money, energy, and efforts to trade, to make money in trading, make money in real estate, make money in stocks, make money in crypto, make money in e-commerce, and he's just this god, right? Obviously, that's not the case. I want to point out that, I have my one or two things that I'm really good at, and I focus all my time and energy into those crafts. For me, that's trading and the businesses under NetCon that I run. Everything else is just something that doesn't require a lot of time, energy, or attention for diversification purposes, right? So my highest, 90% of my money is made from NetCon and trading, and then all of that gets invested into other asset vehicles which can then multiply that money, right? And I obviously want to hedge against inflation, hedge against risk, right? Because obviously I want to have all of my, money that I make from, trading or NetCon in the long-term stocks or all of it in real estate, right? Because if, 2008 happens again or something like that, or we print more money, I want to have different asset vehicles which can hedge against that and also appreciate. So with the money I generated with trading in NetCon, that gets invest into 5 buckets. Long-term dividend stock portfolios. We have, more so speculative stocks, which is the stocks and crypto, which is the 10% of it. Have real estate, which is 20% of it. 20% of it goes towards, other businesses that I'm funding, whether it's, that real estate flip that I funded somebody. I collect interest in that, whether it's e-commerce stores, whether it's something else, but I want to make sure that whatever it is that I invest in, it doesn't require a lot of my time, right? It's not so much passive because obviously it needs to be managed, needs to be set up. But if I know that there's ways for me to put automation systems and people in place to make it as less hands-on as possible, then that is going to be what I optimally look for. And one more thing that I want to kind of bring out is you can't be a jack of all trades. You need to be a master of one craft. If you need to pick your industry and dominate, right? You need to, for me, that's trading. For some people, that's real estate. For some people, that's e-commerce. You need to put, disproportional amount of time into that one skill to get good at it, and then everything else that, all the outcomes that come from that skill monetary, you can then put into other asset classes, right? So don't go out there and start, an e-commerce store while you were learning how to trade and while you're trying to buy your first property, right? You're not going to be able to sustainably do that, all right? And how do I, put disproportional amount of time into, let's say, trading, right? Because right now, even now, like, I'm trying to level up with the big accounts that I trade to, be able to take on 7-figure trades, to have a mental capacity to really level up. That requires me to put disproportional amount of time into trading, right? So I follow a process of eliminate, delegate, and automate, right? So I eliminate tasks that are not serving me in this particular direction. So everything that's not stock trading related gets eliminated. If it can't be eliminated, it gets automated, right? With systems, processes, automations, right? A certain software on the computer or whatnot, and then it gets delegated. If I can't eliminate it or automate it, I delegate it to other people. I bring on and hire people, and I recommend for anybody that's a business owner, even a stock trader, to delegate everything out to other people that cost you less than you make an hour. So for example, if you make $250 an hour, anything that costs you less than $250 an hour should be delegated to other people. So just to give you an example, like yesterday I had a house cleaner for 6 hours in my, for 6.5 hours in my house. She did my laundry, she meal prepped for me, and she cleaned the house, right? People are like, oh, Simon, you're lazy. Well, I know how to do those things myself, and I could do them myself, but I know that I'd rather delegate it to somebody who's going to do it for, number one, less than I make an hour, right? I can pay her $25 an hour, and I know that I can make $2,000 in an hour doing what I'm good at, right? If I'm pretty much buying back time, right? Poor people trade their time for money. Wealthy people with an abundance mindset always try to trade their money for time, to get back time, to put that time into things that they value the most, right? And it's not that I can't make my bed or do the laundry. It's just that it's going to take me more time, and I'm going to do less quality work than that professional is, because for that person, she's a professional at that skill of cleaning and cooking and whatnot. And I'd rather delegate everything that I'm not good at and I'm not an expert in to other people who are experts.
I often quote, I forgot who said this, but there's someone who said he was mowing his lawn, and that it got to a point where he couldn't afford to mow his lawn anymore. Like, you're actually wasting time and money doing it. You're better off just paying someone else to do it, because you're making so much. Like, you have to give up other opportunities to spend that time mowing the lawn. That to me was a major shift, and I like that we're ending it on the time, because I know you have a time is limited tattoo on your arm, right? There it is.
Sure.
So,
right over there.
and I've heard you mention, I think you called it non-refundable minutes, right? So this whole thing of maximizing your time, because it's a very limited resource, I think is a very important thing. I don't know if you have anything you want to say about that, because there's 2 wrap-up questions that I have before I let you go.
Go ahead. I mean, just to add on that, 2 assets that you can never get more of is time and energy, right? Those are like your non-refundable assets. Energy is, kind of like on a fence with that, because you can sleep and replenish it, but it's still, if you drain your battery, you can no longer, your mental battery, you can no longer operate on a high level or make high quality decisions, right? And that's why, there's mental fatigue that we develop throughout the day, right? Your brain is very similar to a phone battery, where, in the morning you take it out, from the charger, it's at 100%. Every decision you make, every person you talk to, every trade you make, every little, task you do, like folding your laundry or cooking meals, right? That drains that battery. And the more you drain, the less high quality decisions you can make. And that's why I delegate all those things. And Sam Ovens, I'm not sure if you know who Sam Ovens is. He calls this concept of a death by 1,000 cuts, right? Because those small things, they seem very small and tiny. That's why he refers to it as 1,000 cuts, but over time they add up. So, picking up your phone because you got that one text, or, folding that one t-shirt, or cooking that one meal, it seems insignificant, but when you go at the end of the day and you add up all the minutes that have been wasted on those small activities, right, it adds up to a lot of time that was wasted, right?
So the 2 final questions I usually wrap up each show with is, if I spoke to people from your high school, or maybe the first semester in college, people that knew you at a younger age, would they be surprised at your success now, or would they be like, Simon, I always knew he had it in him, or would they be surprised?
I think it'd be the second one, like always had it in him. Like for me, in school, I guess it wasn't a full representation of my character, because people really didn't see a lot. a lot of me in school, especially freshman, sophomore year, like after school, I didn't really have any like close friends until senior year of high school. I was very like antisocial or whatever. Like the bell rang at 2:30, I'd be on the bus home, and I'd be home at 3 o'clock playing my video games, making money online, and reading my books and watching my stuff that I wanted to watch on the computer, like Netflix or whatever else I was watching, and people on YouTube. So doing that, right? But also of school in general, I never tried or gave it my all, just because it was never of interest to me. I always did the minimum requirements to just get by, right? Like I remember from the final exam, it was a final math exam for I think junior year, and whether you did good in that or did poor in that would determine whether you'd go into pre-calculus or calculus, right? The next year. And it was final exam. It was like, I think 50 multiple choice questions or something like that. But if you obviously get 50 out of 50, you get 100, right? So I was the first to finish, and I answered 45 questions. I bubbled in 45 questions, and I went to submit the test. And the teacher looked at me. She's like, "You left 5 questions blank. Go fill them out." I'm like, "I don't need to." She's like, "What do you mean? Why?" Well, I'm like, I answered 45 out of 50. That's a 90. 90 is an A. That's all I need to get, right? She's like, "What if you get one wrong?" I'm like, "I know I did."
Wow.
Right? And I got a 90 out of 100 on that test, right? And I just couldn't be bothered to read 5 extra more questions, or even bubble in a random thing to boost my score, right? I just handed in a 45 out of 50, and I didn't touch the rest.
Yeah, that I could definitely see why people say that you were destined for success after hearing that story. What about, we talked about a lot of different things here. It's not just about money. You talked about quality of life, outsourcing things. What is a rich life to you?
I feel like everybody has a different definition of success, right? And before you start, going after that pursuit of money, right? Of like, hey, I need to make X amount of money. First, determine what success means to you, right? Because for everybody, it's different. For some people, success might mean making a lot of money. To some people, it might mean having a lot of friends. To some people, it might mean being the best father they can possibly be and spending, raising their children well. To some people, it might mean traveling the world and crossing off things off their bucket list, right? To me, success means, having the freedom and the freedom of choice to choose who I want to be with, where I want to be, and what I want to do with my time, right? That is the definition of freedom for me. But ask yourself first what that definition of success is for you, because a different definition will require different actions to get there, right?
Perfect. Obviously, I strongly suggest people follow you on social. I'll link to everything in the show notes. Is there anything specific that you'd point people to that want to follow you or learn more about what you're up to?
Absolutely. If you guys would love to talk to me or get connected, follow me on Instagram. Shoot me a DM. Would love to chat. It's Simon_Lerner. That is Lerner. If you guys would like to learn a little bit more about trading and what we have going on with NetCon, you can go to netcon.com. That's netcon.com.
And I'll link to all that in the show notes. I strongly recommend following him on Instagram, especially for that small account challenge, to see how that progresses. Simon, thank you so much, man. Appreciate you with your time.
Thank you for having me.
One quick reminder before I let you go to join my email newsletter. It's going to be like a personal note for me to my friends of all the cool things that have come across that month. From hacks and tips, interesting stories, products, books, ways to make money, and who knows what else. It's totally free, and if you don't like it, you can always opt out at any time. The link to join is in the show notes, and I hope to see you on the list. And there you have it. If you enjoyed this episode, please remember to leave a review. I may even give you a shout out and read yours out on the show. For any and all resources that we discussed, check out the show notes or head on over to boundtoberich.com. Until next time.